So we are live now, Fraser. If we just give it maybe 20 seconds for everybody to get in here,
Okay, that's cool.
that'd be great. I'm just going to post a link on the Full Circle Magic page, just here. So again, we're just giving it 20 seconds. So, Fraser Parker, welcome to this Full Circle Magic interview. Thank you for joining us. You don't know how happy we are to have you and to be able to interview you.
Thank you, the pleasure's mine, all mine.
Where are you calling from right now?
I'm in Malta. I moved out to Malta around Christmas time to come out and perform here, and it's hot, that's all I can say. I've definitely been sweating today already. So.
And have you decided that you're going to stay in Malta, or are you moving back to England?
I'm planning on staying for the summer season for performance, but I do miss England quite a lot. I miss the group such as yourself. I know it's been a while since we last spoke, Blackpool, and so I do miss the comradeship and friends back in England. So I don't think I'll stay here indefinitely, but I think it'll be somewhere that I probably use as a base, as a second home.
So for those people that don't know Fraser, that are just joining us now, Fraser is a wordsmith. He's an incredible wordsmith. He relies on language as a method, as a toolbox, as everything basically. I think he's taken a lot of people's original teachings and he's excelled, and he's managed to take them to a higher plane, if you will. He's got a few books out. He's going to tell us more about his books later on. I don't want to ruin any of that by going into it, but I think this is going to be an interesting interview. I do know Fraser personally. We're good friends. Just so everybody knows that Fraser doesn't know what questions are about to be asked. He hasn't had a look at what the questions are. So this is going to be the first time Fraser ever gets to answer these questions. So I'm going to start with a very cliche question, but I think it'll be a good branch for me to go off on in order to be able to ask you more questions. So can you tell me how you got into magic or mentalism?
Okay, yeah, sure. I got into it quite late, basically. I was around 18, I think, at the time, and I remember seeing like a replay of David Blaine, and I thought he's cool, and I just wanted to be just like him. But it was only after that, once I got into magic and started discovering certain teachings and stuff, that I got into it a lot more seriously. For example, I started off with sleight of hand and magic. And then I was looking for, I always felt like there had to be like this real way of doing something, or at least methods that seemed real to me. And that's when I came across the Wonder Wizards website, which is Kent and Nepper. And people probably know now that I'm a student of Kenton, and so is Pete. But really, it was just, I started reading Kenton stuff. And for me, it just seemed, because it relied on words to make it work, from a methodological, the words made it work, and it was to do with people's perception, and that just seemed like a better deception for me personally. I didn't have to use, gaffs or stuff like that. That's something that I did come back to later on, billet work and using gaffs and stuff like that. But I had to sort of start off in that direction first. I remember reading Mark Wilson's Course of Magic. This was probably when I was 8 years old, and I remember looking at the effects in that book and feeling like, wow, I'm going to be letting on a secret now, and I'm going to have to do real magic. And then I turned over to the next page, which was where the method was, and it was just, I was like, that's not magic, that's not it. So I kind of had like a disillusionment at a young age, and then had to rediscover magic, and that's kind of with me using coming up with my own methods as well. It's kind of making it fit me, method-wise, and making it seem real, if that makes sense.
It certainly does. And I'll segue on from there, because I know you said that you'd read stuff. Did you have much of a background in reading much material, or did you very much create a lot of your own methods and a lot of your own presentations and plots?
Okay, well, it really started with Kenton. I mean, I'd say to people now when they ask me that most of it comes from Kenton. I kind of took the principles and then came up with my own workings on the principles. So yeah, it was kind of like True Mysteries, for instance, the thing that the first book that I came out with, and then I did a DVD later on with the 1914. That's probably what I'm most known for now, and all of that really comes from Kentonism. And I didn't realise a lot of it came from Kentonism until I looked back in the manuscripts. And what it was is there was like a seed of an idea, which had obviously fully formed and bloomed in my mind. So it's not that I've copied anything, but I've really just been a good student, I think, by taking principles and expanding on them. And that's what it feels like as well, is that it's just taking seeds and allowing things to grow from there.
And who are your favourite performers and influences / inspirations?
Well, it's you, man. It's you, for sure. You know, I've had a few coming up. Kenton, obviously. Darren Brown, massive influence, blew me away, you know, when I first saw him. Luke Jamay, really a hero of mine, you know. He kind of gave me this idea that he kind of presented, I think, for the first time, these stranger ideas. He created a lot of controversy with, obviously, 7 Deceptions and building blocks. And I think, to give him credit, he really did sort of allow some of the stuff that we're creating now to be accepted. But okay, that came from Kenton as well. I mean, because I know Kenton helped write Luke's first book, so it really does come from Kenton. But yeah, you definitely. I don't think I'd be in Magic now without you, and I really mean that. I think that, you know, it literally, you're an inspiration to not just me, but to everyone. It's, you know, I really wouldn't be in Magic without you, man.
Thank you, mate. It's really, really heartwarming to hear something like that. And it's the same for you and the likes of Michael and people like Kenton, certainly the reason why I'm in it. So I think what's beautiful about it is it's almost a circle. You know, you get what you put in, you get back what you put in. It's almost, I wouldn't say like karma, but almost karma-like in the sense that...
Yeah, without getting too esoteric, I would say that it's kind of vibration. Kenton talks about how students seem to just appear, and it just felt right at the time. It's weird because everything that I've dreamt of doing in Magic, it's kind of happened. I remember thinking, oh, I want to know how Kenton does his stuff, so I'll either try and get money to buy his work or I'll try and create it for myself. And then I ended up coming up with things independently that shocked Kenton, and he was like, you're not going to believe this, but I've been working on this. And then I remember I thought, I wonder what it's like to be in the school, because he's got a group called The Secret School, and they've put some work out as well. I've helped them with some of that. And I thought, I wonder what it's like to be a member of that. And then I was asked, which was like a mind-blowing, you know, like an amazing thing. And then I thought I wanted to put out a book that was compared with 7 Deceptions. And that happened, and I didn't ask Kenton to write that copy, you know, but that just seemed to happen. So I believe that you can get on like a path if you believe in yourself and work hard as well. You can literally make dreams come true, and I feel like, is that how that feels with you, Pete? With how you came up as well? I know you talk about that similarly.
Yeah, I think that a lot of the time, I think a lot of people throw material out, and I'm not so well. I can't say a lot of people, but there's hosts of people that certainly get an idea and believe it's good and just fire it out as is. And I think what's so great about being a student of Kenton's or having Kenton look over your work is a lot of the time he fires it back and just says, "This is terrible. Do it again." And I had to go through such a rigorous process to be able to even get close to publishing my first book, because in all honesty, the ideas that I sent were terrible. Looking back on them, and I've still got the original book. It was originally meant to be called Double Entendre. It wasn't going to be called Devious Realities. And Kenton says, "You're making a joke of yourself calling it Double Entendre."
Yeah.
and I read it back, and it was really strange because there was a lot of ideas in there that have actually come out since by other creators that we've just pushed to the side and said, "No, we're not going to do this. No, we're not going to do that. It's not good enough for this. It's not good enough for that." You know, I think I remember one piece that were in there that I must have thought were incredible, and this is just will show you just how even people that are considered to have good ideas can come up with absolute terrible ideas. Do you remember the Voodoo Ash routine?
Yeah.
Well, I remember putting a green dab of paint on my finger and doing the same thing with a voodoo ash routine, and then presenting to a second participant a series of paints and using a quiver to get down to the green paint, and then dabbing my finger in the paint to kill where the paint had been, and rubbing it into my palm and using a suggestion for the
Yeah.
second participant to feel like something was happening in the palm of the hand. And then when they opened the hand, there was the green paint. And it were terrible. It was just a ridiculously terrible idea that was never going to get off the ground. That probably made no sense.
Yeah.
Some people might like it, but I think that because Kenton was so harsh, and I'm going to use the word harsh, but it was more in a loving way, and I'm sure you know what I mean by that.
Yeah, of course.
Tells
Yeah.
you honestly. A lot of people will say, "Yeah, this is good," and just fire it out to make money off of it. Kenton's the sort of guy that'll tell you, this is not quite up to par. It's not quite up to scratch. And I
Yeah.
think what's so great about you is any advice that you've been given by anybody, any constructive criticism or any types of criticism, you're the sort of guy that instead of saying, "Well, I'm right and this is about me and this is my book and this is for me," you've realised that what you're doing is you're performing for people.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that to be a good student in the arts, in magic especially, well, in my experience, it really is a case of, losing the ego sort of thing. We're performers, so we have an ego, but it's really keeping that in check to the point where it's not, you should be able to listen to criticism, and also to sort of segue into the creative process as well. It's kind of like the effect that you just described, the method. It might have not been anything as the actual routine, but there probably is these general concepts that are underlying things that come back to you later on. So I think like there's not necessarily a bad idea. It's just how you put it together. And creativity for me feels like I'm making these wild connections, and it really feels like it's kind of like with the ambition thing, where everything I dreamed of happening with magic that came true, I kind of believed that it would do that, and it was right for me. And that's how I feel when I'm creating something as well. It's kind of like it's as if it already exists, and I just have to pull it out of the ether type thing. But to be more practical about how I create, because it's word based, a lot of what I do, and I play with people's perception using words and other suggestion. I sit there in front of a computer and I play around with scripts, and it really is just playing. And I might sit there for an hour and sometimes not come up with anything, but other times it'll just dawn on me what can be done. It might be a principle or a method, or it might be an effect, and it's really just about playing around with words. I used to scribble in a notebook. Now I tend to sit in front of a computer because I can literally edit my scripting as I go. I can take things out, I can refine it as I go, and keep it clear in front of me as well. So that's my creativity, is really just playing, and and some things might come back to you after years. So I think that I kind of deal in general concepts. It almost feels like I'm seeing things. Maybe that's because I'm a visual type thinker, but it's as if I see the connections as if it's almost like a painting, like an abstract painting, which sounds odd, but that's my personal experience with that.
No, it doesn't sound odd at all. And just not to go too far off, because I'm going to come back to the creativity point and on how you'd create a routine, and I know you said that you view things sort of aesthetically to be able to create from that. I think a point to press is as well is when you really understand that you don't have to be a chef to taste the soup. So when like most of the time, if an audience tells you something's bad, it's bad for a reason. You've got to listen, because even though they're not performers themselves, with an ego you can often say, they're not performers, what the hell do they know? But at the end of the day, like they say, you don't have to be a chef to taste the soup, and I think it's very much the same in mentalism, and it's the same in any performing art, that you've got to listen to the people that you're performing to, because essentially right at the end of the line they're going to be the people that are trying to appreciate it the most. And just to segue on to a point that you made a moment ago, you did say that you almost dream ideas, and I want to point out that a lot of people don't know this, but a lot of songwriters actually do dream up the songs whilst they're asleep, and they'll wake up with a hook and then
melody
around it. So the question that I have for you is, when you create, let's say that I said to you, Fraser, you're consulting on my new TV show, I need you to create a drawing duplication that's going to be amazing. what would you do? Would you sit down in front of your computer with a cup of tea? Do you just get flashes of inspiration from places? Can you sort of run us through a little bit of how you decide you're going to create an effect, or does it start with an idea? Do you have a vision of what you want to achieve, and then can you give us an idea of what your process is or what your creative process is?
Okay. I mean, with TV or something like that, it would be really all about presentation and effect and how it looks, right? So I'd be starting at that end, I think. And I always tend to go for the simplest solution as possible. So a lot of things that I've created have really been methods, because I was never happy with kind of having to have someone write something down and stuff like that. So I approached it from a different end. And it's only now that I've started to go back to billet work and stuff like that. But I think any means necessary, really, for TV and presentations such as that. But yeah, I would basically, it's almost like brainstorming, but rather than just writing down every idea, I tend to grasp around for I know that this has been said before, to paraphrase someone. I'm not sure if Einstein said it, but he said, somebody said that it's kind of like you already have, you get the answers before you ask the question type thing. It seems to be in that order with me. It's odd. I see something in something conceptually. I might just be in a general conversation with someone, and what they say sets off a concept in my mind, and then I'll work on that. So I'll sit down and script things until I see that it fits something that I'm trying to do. It's it's kind of, I would say the important thing is, on a practical level, is to play. Allow your subconscious to let these ideas come out. It's okay to focus on something consciously. That's how we do that. But we need our subconscious. We have to give it up to the subconscious, really, to come up with a solution. So don't really stress out about it. Just play. Just enjoy the process. I think I'm happiest when I'm creating. I've said that before with friends and stuff. It's almost like I'm in my own world. And I kind of had a thought the other day. Is this why there's anything created at all? Is it the fact that God likes being in His creation and far out? But that's kind of probably getting too esoteric and too deep. But I do read philosophy as well. That's an important part of my life, and that kind of does inform my magic as well. Like, I wouldn't want to preach at an audience, but I would like to use metaphors, and Kenton's good at that. He shows how that's possible with certain books that he's written and stuff. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do. Like the other artists take those risks, so I feel like that's a good use for magic. And also the philosophy, I call it the real magic, because to me everything is in perception. Everything is, with the mind. So I mean, and with the true mystery stuff, the breakthrough principle in true mysteries, I didn't realize I was doing this until I'd gone out and performed the stuff. For those who don't know, true mysteries is it's a way of doing what looks like hypnosis, but without any hypnosis. And I kind of didn't want to use any inductions or any actual hypnosis, so I approached it from a trick perspective. And I thought I was just going to get trick things, like outcomes. But what happened is, by acting as if what I was doing was real, it actually made it a reality. And that's kind of like the ultimate thing to me. It's almost as if I've rediscovered real magic. It's almost like, just make it look a certain way and it'll be taken as that way. So it seems like I'm tapping into a real, like real magic, I know that TV can be thought of as a hypnotic tool as well, like adverts we're bombarded with. And cultures can be created that way as well. So yeah, without getting too deep, but that's how I feel with that.
I think a lot of the time it is. I mean, because I think there's a very strange thing with hypnosis, and just to point out, a lot of the time, because people don't know what hypnosis is and they don't understand what the process is, a lot of the time when you're approaching something from this angle and you're presenting yourself as that, you can almost elicit a placebo type effect. And that's why I always said with you, and I remember when this is the very first time we ever connected, we talked, and I remember a conversation that we had that I'll never forget. We talked about how you can genuinely hypnotize somebody by doing this stuff, and just how careful you have to be when you're doing it, because a lot of the time I don't think people, they read it in the pages, they go out and perform it, but there's an underlying power there that most people don't see when they read it. It's only when they go out and they're performing it that they really understand just how powerful this stuff is. And I did I don't know if I got to send you this video, but I did a video of me with a few ladies in a bar.
Yeah, I saw that one. That was awesome.
Where I
Yeah.
took the card stick thing and I used a glass when she was putting a glass down.
Yeah, right, yeah.
She genuinely freaked out, and you could see from her face that and I put my bank card down on the table, and I'm like, if you could take the bank card, here's my PIN code, you can have the entire content of the bank card. You know, what's inside my bank is yours. If you could just take your hand off the glass to take it. And I really love a lot of your stuff, and the reason that I love a lot of your stuff is I almost think with it, and I've said this to you before, and if for anybody who buys Fraser stuff, there will be links to Fraser's products. If you want to contact Fraser on Facebook to get all of his products, he'll tell you about the things that he's got, that he's worked on, that he's contributed to, the stuff that he's working on now. He's happy to answer any questions that you have for him privately. But I think what's so beautiful about it is it's so versatile.
Yeah, that's the thing. I really gave it a bare bones presentation when I taught this stuff, because I really wanted people to grasp the underlying principles. And the good thing about, I mean, you've shown that it can be used as well. It's kind of taken the principles, and you can really just do what you want with it. It's almost like building blocks. And I've written the sequel to True Mysteries like that as well. The effects, there's some great effects in there, but it's really, you're getting a lot more, you know. It's just about pondering on what's being taught. And I kind of write in a similar style to Kenton as well, because I found that when I've read his work back a few times, I always get something different out of it every time I read it back. So that was kind of my intention. And I know that we talked about that as well at some point, how I probably didn't show how versatile it was, because I kind of took it for granted that people would take it as principles, but that was my intention, was for people to just use it in their own ways, essentially. And I know that people do that. I've had friends who are friends now that have contacted me, and some people create whole shows out of it, which is really, makes me so proud, the fact that, you know, I started off just in a bedroom in a small village, and just by believing in myself, I managed to create a name. So, and other people use my stuff, which is real nice to know, you know. It feels strange.
So just to segue on, because we're talking about people using your things,
yeah.
I'd like to revert to something that we mentioned earlier before I get off topic. Do you believe that when you perform, not believe so much, but do you use any disclaimers? What is it that you claim to be? You know, when you perform, because what you're doing has a very real feel to it, and I think the word "feel" is very important in this context. It's not just a belief of it being real, because a belief in itself is great, but when you feel something's real, that's a completely different thing. Because what you do, people are feeling it's real. Do you have to tell people what you're doing is a form of trickery, or what disclaimer do you give, or if any disclaimer?
Yeah, okay. I kind of let the performance speak for itself as much as I can. But I do use a disclaimer. I'm not going to say what the actual disclaimer is, but it's essentially it's along the lines of I am using trickery, but the fact that it's all in the mind anyway. The experience is real, and that kind of goes back to something I was talking about before as well. Is that we offline we actually. This was when you first actually contacted me, like I think a year ago. I think we first met, and I think I talked about it then. But basically, there's this like, I think of it as a silent script. If the method seems real to you, then I think the audience feel that as well, which is really like a side issue that comes out of that anyway, because I use methods that aren't necessarily gimmicked or gaffed, and it's words and psychology that I use. I think what's important is to make it audience-centric, like we was talking about before as well. Is that, yeah? I think it's the feeling that's important. It's really, I think magic is really the tool. It's It's a useful tool that we can use to. It all comes down to, I think, just sharing a moment with another human being.
It
That's
does.
really how I've boiled it down in my own
It's
mind. Is like that's what we're doing. We're creating an experience and sharing an experience, right?
it's a bridge to connect people.
hmm Yeah.
A bridge. It opens up portals and doors, and it's almost really strange because unlike any other art form, it elicits such a I'm going to use the word awe in people's emotions, and when you
Yeah.
sit and
Well,
watch people, it's really incredible because I think David Blaine summed it up in taking people back to being children.
yeah. You pull Harris out of astonishment because Paul was David's mentor as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's that childlike state of wonder, right? And Kenton talks about it as enchantment as well. And I think that's kind of important to remember. I mean, the universe is a mystery, and I think we should share in that, not knowing, you know. Um, to me, there's kind of this hardline skeptic type materialism scientific community that's going on at the moment. That seems to be prevalent in the Western world. And I'm not saying that the extreme of spiritual things. I think we need a balance. And as artists, as an artist myself, I want to help bring about a balance. So that's kind of important to me as well. So I don't claim that it's real. I don't think I do use genuine intuition and genuine impressions, but I've got like outs for that as well, psychological outs. And Kenan's got a great work called The Original Mind Reading Lesson. It's the original book that we did before we wrote the mind reading lessons, and I use that all the time. And it's really a way of being really specific with your impressions, and it's using your intuition. And you can't think that you don't want to get it wrong, because that's almost the wrong way of thinking about it. And it's strange how accurate you can be. You can be so specific about things, naming like they received a letter today and what colour it was. And I actually was in a bar a few weeks ago, and this girl knew I was a magician. Said, "Can you do anything?" And when I don't really want to perform, I kind of just go off my real intuition. It just seems easier to go to that. And so I said some stuff and used some of the outs in this book. And she was like, "No, that's not it. It didn't hit." So I went down the road to another bar, and she comes in after work, runs over. "Oh, I hate you. I've worked it out now. It was my dad. You were right. You said it was something to do with a family member." And she made it fit still, like you would a cold reading, but you're really specific, and it just makes the hit so much more. So I do use genuine intuition, but I do use a disclaimer as well, because I don't want to say that I'm all out psychic, because I'm still discovering these things myself. So I think it's only fair as an artist to represent it with a balanced opinion. And I think it's useful to be balanced anyway. That's what this path of being on a magic path is showing me anyway. And that's what I want to share, is bringing back balance. And it's strange because with cold reading, for instance, you tend to say one statement and then bring it back with a counter statement. So you're really just sitting on the fence all the time. So it's useful to, if you talk about balance, for that. But it's strange, because I think the most powerful thing I've ever done, this girl was talking to me and I didn't know what her problem was, and I just did some cold reading, but sincerely, I didn't, and I used my genuine intuition as well. And a few months later I was in the same place, and she said, "Oh, have you got anything else that's life-changing to tell me?" And I thought, that's amazing that I actually affected her that much. And it just goes to show that your words and your intentions really do have an impact on people. And I know you talk about that a lot. So you really shouldn't be throwing crap into people's minds. You should literally, Kenton calls it pattern karma. You have to be responsible with what you're doing, because it does appear powerful, and I think it is powerful. To be a magician in the world these days is just as powerful as it ever has been, as long as you treat it as a real responsibility. So I take magic seriously. It's not, to me, just, there's nothing wrong with using it to have fun, to be entertaining. It's essential to be entertaining, but I do hold myself as a symbol of a magician as well, as the real thing in those terms.
So I think with that as well now, there's a few things that I sort of picked out on there that I'd like to ask you questions off my own back, and then we will start to move to ask questions that other people are messaging in, because we are getting a flood of questions in the private messages and on the thread.
Okay.
Just to press a point, I believe very much so that it's great to be sat on top of the fence when you're performing, because if you can reach all audiences at the same time, I think that's such a wonderful thing. Because I think this is one thing I've found, and this is just based on experience. It's not based on anything else. And I'm not saying the people that are still doing this don't have experience, because they have much more than me. But there's people out there that denounce psychics, and they denounce mediums, and they denounce this and they denounce that. And what you tend to find is that if you stand a woman up, and I've seen this at a very famous performer show very recently, that even if you tell somebody you're not a psychic, and you read them in such a way, and they believe in mediums, and you say, I'm just going to show you a demonstration of how I can use my abilities to show you that I'm not a medium or a psychic, and they perform something, the person, no matter what you tell them, is still going to believe that you're a medium or that you're a psychic. And the only way that I can sort of prove that this is the case is that, I'm not going to say whose act it is, because you'd have to go see it, but there's a part of this really famous person's act where they pretend to be psychic, and they pretend to contact somebody on the other side. And then they throw out a name, and they start to say, and it leaves this message. And the woman actually thanked the performer for the message. They were like, thank you for doing that for me. Now, if she didn't believe it, she'd never thank the performer for it, even though he claimed that he wasn't real. And I think what was so beautiful about it is it was almost a lesson in itself, in that it was almost a lesson in itself, in that people are always going to believe what they want to believe, no matter what you tell them. So I think it's a great place to be, sat on the fence right in the middle, because then you're firing to both audiences and everybody leaves happy.
Yeah.
And the second thing that I want to sort of press on is based on the cold reading stuff. And I'm a massive fan of, a lot of people don't know this, is whenever I'm going to perform, a lot of the time, if I'm performing for somebody who does believe in this sort of stuff, I don't pretend to be a medium. I just tell them I genuinely am using my intuition, because a lot of the time, I've said, I wouldn't even call it make guesses. I follow my feelings with stuff, and it turns out that my feelings are very much true. But I'm not claiming that that's psychic. I'm just saying that because, just like a taxi driver that's drove for so long, they can reach a destination without having to think, like a barman can just to touch reach for a drink and remember prices. Because I tend to find now, maybe my brain does it for me subconsciously, people are put into groups, specific groups, that I can work things out about these people using my own feelings and my own intuition. Do you, just a quick question on this, when you're performing, do you do a lot of that and then slot in one real secure hit and then sort of flower up around it using this intuition, or do you try to use intuition all the time, and then when you find that it's sort of lagging a little bit, or you're just having an off day, or you're just not connecting with the person in the way that you normally connect with them, then do you move into what would be traditionally known as an effect or a performance?
Yeah, well, yeah, I think I do definitely put it in there within my more solid material. But the nice thing is that the methods that I do use, they've kind of got built-in outs anyway, so you can afford to risk. And the most powerful stuff I think I've ever done is when I've just spoken from my heart and nailed exact things about people that I couldn't possibly know. And I still aren't sure how that works, but it's because I had the outs to rely on that it allowed me to do that. So that's important as well. There are ways of taking risks in performance. So yeah.
So just to segue on, somebody's asked a question, and I think this is a good place to address it. There is a question by a guy called Ross Taylor. He's posted on the Full Circle Q&A, and he's basically asked me that, well, I'll read it exactly as he's put it.
Okay.
He says, Fraser, I'm an absolutely huge fan of your approach. It's helped me end my embarrassment of feeling like I'm lying to an audience whilst trying to attempt to connect with them. As a question, so this is his question, I was performing your memorial routine recently, which I love incidentally, and was challenged by a nearby spectator to tell him or tell them what they'd done earlier that day. I just had to laugh it off. In that scenario, how would you have handled it? And he also finishes, what did he do today? So I don't know if you know what he looks like. I don't know if you know the guy, but he's basically saying,
What's his name again? Sorry.
he's called Ross Taylor. How would you have handled a situation where somebody's created a challenge for you, and asked you what they'd done today, and then he finished with, and I don't know if you, again, this is not a challenge of any sort, but he asked, what has he done today?
Okay. Okay, I'll approach this, seeing as I was just talking about using actual intuition, I'll approach this as I would do any other challenge situation. This is really, okay, I'll try this and then I'll tell you what method I'm using, essentially. So it's important here that I don't overthink this and just, so I'm going to try and be specific, because what cold readers would do, they'd be general, so I'm going to try and be specific. So I'm just going to name, okay, there's something to do with literally an object. It is an object, it's not, I'm not being metaphorical there. I would say made out of plastic, I'm going to say that. Red. And the general thing I'm going to say is I'm thinking upwards. I don't know why, but up. It's an actual object, and the object is up there. So yeah, I will be general in certain instances, but hopefully you can comment and see if that's anywhere near. The thing that I was using there, I'm using my genuine intuition, but it's the mind reading lesson book that I talked about before. Trying to be specific. Or not trying to be specific. It's a real odd one. So we'll see if that's anywhere near. I don't know.
Ross Taylor,
shows.
I'm going to tell you what you did today. You sat down at your computer, you had a look at the Full Circle Magic page and went, shit, Fraser Parker's doing an interview this evening. I best go on there. What question can I ask Fraser? And then you proceeded to post a question to ask Fraser, and then Fraser incidentally answered that question. That's what you did today. Incredible. Mm-hmm. But all jokes aside, how would you have handled the situation? How would you have handled the situation had it been you? If somebody had, and if you'd like, I mean, this might be fun for people to see. We could sort of bounce an idea so they could see how we brainstorm an idea of how to deal with something like that.
Yeah.
So I'll start with, let's say that I'd said, that's okay, that's great, tell me what I've done today. So let's say I'd ask that question first. From this point, I mean, it'd be nice to hear your viewpoint on what's the first thing that you do, what's the first thing that you deal with.
Okay, I think it's important to keep the balance again, like you say, sitting on the fence. You've got to somehow reframe their skepticism, which I know that I think you've got a line that you use a lot to do with the difference between. It's not for me to say because I think it's in products, but yeah, I would reframe their skepticism essentially. That's what you need to do, I think.
So the first thing would be to deflect, and I think with something like that, it'd be if somebody asked me what they did today, the first thing I'd say is, okay, what you did today is going to be monumental to your future. But before we get to that, because I've never read you before, we're working on fragile ground. So let's try something else, and we'll slowly build this up, just like I've been building with this lady here, and hopefully by the end of it, I'll be able to tell you exactly what you did today. So if you could think of one thing that had proved beyond any shadow of a doubt that all this were real, because I know you're having an internal conflict mentally and emotionally, if you could think of just one thing that had proved beyond any shadow of a doubt that all this was real, could you think of what it'd be? And then obviously from that point I'd go off into using another technique, because now I've deflected the goalposts, and then you could almost use whatever you wanted there. And I think what's really nice now is what they did that day seems insequential in comparison to the one thing that had proved it was entirely real.
Yeah, that's beautiful, because you've led them essentially to then go into whatever effect you wanted to do.
Yeah, and it seems insequential. And then at the end, I'd say, now I have more of a feel for you. Let me tell you this, that every single thing that you do in life has a complete and direct effect on your future. And life's a strange thing, because when you can take into account the past and the present, and you take into account all the factors and variables surrounding any given situation, life's like a formula. And when you add them up, you can almost predict the outcome of your future. So, does it really matter to me what you did today? No. What matters is what you've done now, in the present.
Yeah.
Because we've done something that's essentially important. We created a memory. We created something together that's going to last forever. And I just made that up on the spot, but I mean, I'd probably make it so that it seemed almost like what you did today before this point, to me, it's insequential. What we've done together now, that's what's important, and this will be talked about forever.
I mean, you could even go a step further with that, and you could show them that what they did today has brought them to you, and if they doubt that as a premise, then prove that the moment does actually influence the future by doing a prediction effect. So you'd then lead it to the effect anyway, but still include the past, I think, as well. It's quite nice.
That'd be nice then, because what you've done is you've also pressed the point on the formula, and by saying that everything, that's beautiful, because now what we've got is everything that you did today led to this moment.
Yeah, and now I'm going to try and show you why that is important from what you do in the present is what this, and then you use a prediction.
Future. See, so I think that's really nice there. So essentially, what just to break it down into semantics of what would happen is deflect and reframe, which would be take them away from the challenge by reframing it to something that's seemingly fair in their favor when in fact it's fair in your favor.
Yeah, beautiful.
You know, because you've then deflected the challenge. Not only that, you're now in a ballpark that you can control. You control that, and then you bring it full circle by then bringing it back to what they've done today. But instead of finishing with an effect, because you've already done an effect, you don't want it to just be a series of effects, because then what you're doing is you're not doing what's ultimately important and throwing out, as you mentioned earlier, a metaphor. Finishing on a metaphor, basically, now you've left them with a message that affects them not just now but in the future as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was just going to say as well how most people, when they come up with presentations and effects, they think about it, mentalism, in terms of challenges in the sense of superpowers that you would have, whereas this is a genuine challenge. And as well as this, and it's just beautiful how presentationally that can be the effect, you know. And I suppose we came up with that now, but I suppose the more you plan on what's going to happen, what could potentially happen, or if you set the challenge situation up, that's a nice idea as well, I think. If you can create challenge moments in your show. There's one thing that I do that I cover things in close-up, like pre-show, but I call it now show, where I would set something up across a different table, for instance, in a restaurant, and then have a way of them ringing themselves in. And one nice way of doing this is to create a challenge situation where you say, just for fun, instead of me trying to get this right now, I want you to come over and just challenge me. So you could perhaps...
That's nice. It's very, very nice.
Yeah, it's kind of like the idea of Houdini setting up his own challenges. It's like, if you can appear to, and I've done it before, and you know, the girl screams, and it was a comedy show actually when I first tried this idea, and they pretty much stopped what they was doing on stage, and then in the break the compere asked the girl what had just gone on, because the whole room just looked at me, because the group had reacted so strongly to the challenge situation. So yeah, that's just an idea that I'll just throw out.
And just to cut in before we go any further, Ross has replied, and I can't say what he said, but he said he's accidentally left his frisbee today, and it's an orange/red frisbee. So you're a legend.
Wow.
Because you managed to get the upward direction and the colour, and that it was made of plastic, which is incredible.
Nice. That's cool. I mean, it just shows that if you are specific, it can pay off. Because I could have been really general there and tried to get around it. You know, and also if hits don't happen, there's the adage that they get forgotten about, right?
Whilst you're on the subject of that, do you remember the hits not happening thing? I have something that I think is going to be cool, and I'd like to try out. And it's not an effect that you're going to perform, and it's not an effect that I'm going to perform. It's just going to be just a general test of intuition, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't matter. It's not about, like I say, it's not about me performing. But do you remember at Blackpool where we played the game where somebody put a card in a box?
Yeah.
And everybody at the table had changed their mind as many times as they wanted.
Yeah.
And I think it were a lot of the time we got it right. And I'm not going to go into what the out is because the out's not for everybody watching. But I like to play that game, and just to show you what sort of games that we'd play if we were sat at a table, especially when we're drinking shots, because these are the most incredible type of games. Do you want me to do this at my side and get a deck of cards of mine, or do you have a deck of cards at your side that you could use and pull one out and put it into a box, and you can do it on me? That'd be nicer than me doing it on you.
I've just got an idea. If you've got a box there, a deck, let's do it at the same time just to see. Because this would be crazy if we could do it.
I'd have to dig one out. I don't know where my stuff is. I can grab one, but it'd probably take me a few minutes. Do you want to get one at your side? Why don't I write it down, what I've changed my mind from and to, and then I finish with it and I turn it around?
Yeah, because what the game was, people would have seen us do this at Blackpool. We allowed people to literally change their mind as much as they wanted, right? I'll just do it with you. I've got a deck actually. It's in a red box, and it's blue deck. So I lost the case, but it's in the red box. So okay, what I'm going to do is, what we would have it in the box. Obviously, it's off camera, but I'm going to get you to change your mind a few times, and I'm only going to ask you for the card when it's in view. But I'm going to give you the duration of the rest of the interview to do this. Because I want everyone to know this is fair. We haven't set anything up. I know people know that we're friends, but this is really, it's right. Okay, we'll try.
Why don't you spread them out face down on the table, and take one out at random?
Okay.
So if you spread them,
okay.
And then just take one out at random.
Because another thing we did, we'd take one and then purposely fool ourselves. That was when we was just playing guessing cards, but this is different. So yeah, I've just took one at random. So I'll show you the box is empty. Okay.
Don't you look at the card either, though.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't matter. Put it in. It's fine. It's all right. Just don't tell me where it is.
Okay. Okay. So that's sealed.
I think they can see by how crap we are being right now that
nothing's set up, right? We're just like
because this is
really the whole thing here is what we were started with at Blackpool was this fun game, wasn't it? Just guess the card, and then we started thinking. Well, I told you that I had a way of potentially doing it just with a box. So this is what I'm going to show you. Hopefully this will work. So just what I want you to do though is. I think you might already have a card in your mind, but I want you to dismiss that because you're going to potentially go back to that, but I'm not going to say anything else. You know, you might come back to a colour or suit, but just feel free to change your mind as much as you want. The box is here, and I'm literally going to just leave it over there. I'm not even going to look at it, and then I'll ask you when it's in view to make this fair.
And I'll tell you just interestingly. Whilst we're talking about logic and making points, I found, and this is genuinely true, I found that a lot of the time when something seems fairer, it's actually not as fair. And there'll probably be a lot of people calling me out on this, but you could try it for yourself and you'll see. I used to do this thing where I asked somebody to think of a star sign. Now, bear in mind, think about this. When they took a guess, it was 1 in 12, right?
Yeah.
So then I said, now change your mind. Now, in them changing their mind, the probability gets greater that they're going to guess it because it's not now 1 in 12. They've already had one guess. It's now 1 in 11. And then they change their mind one more time, and it's 1 in 10. And what's so beautiful about that is when you present it as though it's and mathematically somebody's probably going to call me on that, but I found that that's more the case. And when you tell someone to change their mind, change it again. What's beautiful is most of the time it hits. But not only that, if it misses, you can always then say, be honest, did you change your mind from that? And a lot of the time, even if they didn't, they'll say they did, say they did. And then you can make a point at the end and say that teaches you that you should always trust your intuition. And that's what the rest of this is about. But if they do nail it bang on, you say now you intuitively felt from changing like this to this to this. And that teaches you should always trust your own intuition. And you come back to the same point anyway.
Yeah, which is like a natural out presentation, which is beautiful. I mean, the first True Mysteries, and in fact, in the deal that we've got up for Full Circle Magic, I'm giving away just instantly the first True Mysteries 1 PDF free with True Mysteries 2 book. But the reason I mentioned True Mysteries 1 is because there was, I think it made it in there, I'm sure it did, there was an idea that I had about changing your mind. And basically what it was taking like a group of categories, and rather than hoping that they hit the force object, you would get them to change their mind so much that they would go for the most unlikely. And I think the nice thing is when you're getting them to change their mind, you're kind of getting into that pattern yourself, so then you know when to stop almost. So it seems to add a seemingly it makes it more difficult to control theoretically, but actually I think it creates more of a pattern that you can probably pick up on yourself. So that's an interesting idea. That was just a seed of an idea that I didn't finish. But I think that's in the first True Mysteries. It might not be, but you've got it here now anyway. I think it made it into the mind reading lessons.
So do you want me to mention out loud my thought process so far, or?
Yeah, don't mention any cards if you can, in case people will think I'm moving around with.
Okay, I won't mention anything. I'll get to a point where I'll just tell you what my process was at the end.
Okay.
And we'll come back to that, because there is a few more questions that are coming in.
Okay.
And I'm going to ask you what these questions are. Again, I'm just going to the questions page, so if this takes a few seconds, there is a few seconds dead time, please forgive me. Okay, there is something I want to ask you whilst I'm doing this. I've heard from a little bird, and I'm very upset with you, Fraser, for not telling me about this. You have a new marked deck that you've just created?
Yeah, right. I mean, this is something that I've had in my mind for like 6 years, right? And it is a concept that I didn't have a way of doing it. And it was only recently that I started to think about it again. And I tried a few different solutions, and that wasn't gonna be it. And then I just hit upon the perfect solution, and I couldn't believe it. It's like, I think it's the best thing I've done, or the thing that I'm most happy with, because I mean, essentially what it is I can't see marks on marked decks very easily because I need to wear glasses, and I haven't got around to getting contacts yet. So even Ted Leslie, stuff like that, I had a nightmare trying to see. And I know a few performers are similar to that, so we build in moments where, you know, you'd get them to hold out the hand, build in the moment where you can get the peek as they put the hand on top, for instance, and all of this. But I really didn't want any restrictions. I wanted to be able to read the deck quickly. And what I came up with, just to briefly go through the concept was to be able to see a bold marking from a distance and make it easier to see with distance, at a distance, but to be completely undetectable from a short range. And the principle that I'm using, which I won't go into, is really kind of does that. It's an optical illusion, and it allows you to see the marks plain as day from a distance and even close up, but the audience will miss it because it actually works with perception as well. So you've kind of got 3 things going for you that make sure that the audience don't see it, but you do. And it even works better without my glasses on. So the only other clue I'll give you is that it's juice. It's similar to a juice method, shading, but no chemicals added. It's completely self-contained, and it's at the printer stage, trying to get a proof at the moment. But yeah, thanks for asking. I'm sorry I didn't. I was thinking actually, I wanted to just send you a deck with no instructions and just go and just let you have this weird object that you had to work out for yourself.
You know what would have happened though, don't you? I'd have put them on the windowsill
And seen them eventually.
Somehow, I don't know what the method is, like I say, because I don't know what juiced is, but I'd have just put them on the windowsill and I'd have walked away. They've been coming back in to pick them back up, thinking, why the hell has he sent me these cards?
Yeah. I think that would be a great wind-up. I might just send Kent a deck. He's probably watched this, so. But yeah, I just love the idea of someone sat there. It reminds me of when Richard Ostlin worked out his stacked deck, and he sent it to one of his mentors, and just said, "These are stacked. Work it out." And obviously, it took him forever to work it out, many different iterations. And the guy was like, if these are marked, that's genius. Stacked, sorry, stacked.
Well, that's the thing. I think with your stuff, it's very, very nice. And I know we were talking about. I don't know how long ago this was that you mentioned that you had an idea. You never said anything since then, and all of a sudden, somebody just tells me, "Oh, you need to see this little thing that Fraser's. You need to see this little thing that Fraser's created because it's incredible." So keep your eyes out for that, because that's going to be something that I believe is going to be like incredible, because I know that your thinking's great. I know that the way you produce things is incredible. I know also that the way that you don't just you go the extra quarter of a mile when everybody else gets three
I
quarters.
just want to make it clear. I just want to make clear with this deck, it's really it works with perception as well. You know, so the concept's great, but there's three things that I talk about in the booklet that it's literally to do with perception. So the audience members are not going to see it. You know, it's real nice. And I just want to mention on my personal website, fraserparker.co.uk. You can find, it's called the Acadian Deck, and you can sign up to a newsletter if you're interested, because we want to sort of, I mean, it's a utility device, so we want to flood the market with it as much as we can. Don't want it to get copied, essentially. It's my baby. It's like, I want my name to be on that. You know, I think it probably will be copied if I'm not careful. So we've copyrighted it and all of that.
Can you just say the name one more time for us?
Acadian Deck.
The Acadian Deck.
Acadian. It's a civilization after the Sumerians. Yeah. So, and you can find more information on my website. So that's cool.
Can you recommend any philosophy for people to read? Because I know that you are very much a philosopher. We sat until early hours of the morning talking philosophy. Would you be able to recommend any sources or where people can sort of, because you talked about metaphors, and now I'd like to ask, how do you create metaphors, and what stuff would you recommend checking out for people who wanted to read about metaphors and read about how to create metaphors?
Okay, I think a good place to start, I would say, would be Buddhism. I think that's the clearest teaching on a lot of these concepts, and some of it can get really heavy. As far as metaphor, you'll find it in sort of songs, in poetry, and I think just by going within your own experiences, you can create stories. Think about what your needs are as a human being, and realize that there are other people's needs. Try and recognize yourself in others and others in yourself. And I think you can trust in that to create stories and metaphors. It's really what you want to do in the world, and to make it a better place, I might add.
Yeah. Negative connotations.
Yeah.
So right now we've probably got about another 5 minutes left. Is there anything that you want to talk about? Is there anything that you'd like to mention about what you're going to be doing in the future, where you hopefully aim to be? You know, and also I've got a question. When are you going to invite me over to Malta? When can I come to Malta and chill out, and we can go swimming and go to the beach?
Well, you're welcome whenever you want, Pete. Get it booked, actually. If I know you're probably busy at the moment, but whenever you're free, just come over. I'm free to welcome you whenever. That's, you know, always open there. Anything else I wanted to mention would be, I'm looking at potentially doing lectures in the future. That's something that I want to slowly get into. But I'm really concentrating on performance more now, and writing. But I can imagine next year perhaps that'll be something that I want to get into. But yeah, it's because I'm kind of hermital, but I'm trying to be in the world a little bit more now, and so it's really just getting out there. So I'm pleased that I've been accepted by the community, and I've got good friends like yourself, Atlas, Michael, and all of that group. I think it's really useful to have people to be able to talk to, and that actually care. And I try to help people up as well. You know, feel free to contact me whenever you want. I know you get inundated and you try to get back to people. I'm not quite as inundated yet, but feel free to just send me a message or an email. Like, that's how I started. I emailed Kenton and he got back to me, and I think that's important, to give back. once you get a name, it's important to remember where you came from, sort of thing, So that's all.
So with that, I'd like to close because we've done an hour, which I think is a good amount for an interview. It saves us spilling over and going into too much. We've answered a lot of questions. You've been an incredible guest. Thank you for letting us question you. Thank you for letting us ask you personal things. Thank you for going into detail on your creative processes. And I know that these things, because obviously we know each other, this has been a social chat more than anything else. And I think it's beautiful, this type of interview, because people get to be almost fly on the wall-esque.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we literally, I'm being honest as I can, and this is the sort of things we do talk about in private, because I think it's clear that people can see that you are genuinely passionate about your art. I feel the same way as well. So it's nice that people have got to hear this, and they genuinely can email me, message me on Facebook, whenever you want, and I'll try and help. I'll try and be there and help. Of course, we're busy, so it might not be straight away, but I'll try and get back to people. So don't forget which card. Have you made a decision on the card, or do you want to? I'm going to put the box up here, right?
I'm dithering between two cards right now, and
Okay.
and I'm almost. This is the thing. There's two endings. There's two ways that this could go. There's three ways that this could go.
It could fall completely flat and not work.
It can fall completely flat. It can hit dead on, or it can be very poetic. And I'm right now deciding intuitively which one I'd like to.
Can I just say, using my intuition, because when these things come in, I have to just say them because, otherwise I'm up all night. Can I just check with you? Have you just thought of something that's very close to what your favourite card would be? Because I know that your favourite card would be Seven of Hearts. If you are close to that, I don't know, or not.
I am close to that, but this is the thing. Well, that's what I'm delivering on.
Okay.
And this is the beautiful moment. This is the point I want to make, because my feelings are it is my favourite playing card. Is the Seven of Hearts.
Yeah.
I thought that might be a little bit too obvious, so I went up to the Eight of Hearts. But then I thought, if it is the Eight of Hearts, if I'd have stuck with the Seven, then this would be really poetic in the sense that it really backs everything we've ever been taught about being off by one.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean.
But then if I went for the Nine of Hearts, am I going to be off by two if it is my favourite card inside there? So I'm having a conflict of interest. My favourite card is the Seven of Hearts, and I'm delivering. I'd just like to say, Fraser Parker.
Can I, before you say anything, can I peek it?
Yeah, you can take a look.
I'm just going to look. So I'll keep the camera on me by speaking. Jesus. Well.
The only thing that I've definitively committed to is the fact that it's a heart, and that's it. And that's the only thing that I felt was right. I know it's in the region. I we're going to go for my favourite, but I think it'd be unfair to go for my favourite because maybe you knew my favourite. So, well, you did know my favourite. You mentioned it. So maybe if I go with the eight, it's poetic because it's in between the 9 and the 7, which I was feeling. And either way, we're going to be off by 1. And I think that beautifully wraps up a lesson that Ken taught us.
Nice. I mean, I'm kind of, you can see, I want to show people because I've literally, I've peeked it. This, again, is why you should always trust intuition. Man, it was.
Oh!
Oh, man, that's awesome.
And again, people are going to think that there was some setup that I can hand on heart promise. They genuinely wasn't. I just we're going to go for my favourite, and I delivered between 3 cards. Incredible. I think that's a beautiful note to end this interview on. I'm very, very impressed that went as nice as it did, and I'm a little bit upset that I didn't stick to my guns and go with the 7 because I feel that the 7 or the 9 would have probably been a more poetic ending. But to hit,
I felt a little bit like I cheated by peeking, because it was as if then I could have influenced you. I don't know, but that's like, I don't know, man. I'm a little bit freaked out now. Okay. Anyway, I just want to say as well, before I forget, thank you for having me, Full Circle Magic. Thank you to Laura and all the admins and everyone that makes this happen. I'm happy that you was interested enough to listen to my ramblings.
No,
Okay.
with that, we will go again. Thank you, and thank you everybody for tuning in. And I'll see you again next time. I believe that I'm interviewing either, I can't remember who it is. It's either going to be Atlas Brookins or Michael Murray. So please tune in to watch me interview them, and I will catch you later. Peace out.